Hi there, I'm Matt DeLeo, and today I'll be giving you a step-by-step demonstration on how to screen print using photo emulsion. For this demonstration, we'll be using Speedball photo emulsion. It is available at any art store, really. You could get it at Michael's, you could get it at Blick, you could get it at pretty much anywhere. It's about $35 a jar, and it comes with a sensitizer that you have to mix into the emulsion itself to make it light sensitive, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute. By light sensitive, I mean that when you are using and mixing this material, you are not going to want the lights on. A little bit of natural light from the outdoors is okay, but in an ideal situation, you would want to be using as little light as possible so that you don't pre-expose your screen or pre-expose your emulsion in general. The first thing we're going to be doing is coating our screens with our emulsion. What you're going to need for this are your screen, you're going to need emulsion, and you're going to need a scoop coater. Now, scoop coater is probably about $20 depending on the size, but it's very useful in coating your screen evenly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pour some emulsion into the scoop coater, and then we're going to coat our screen. Okay, so as you can see, we have the lights off, we have our emulsion, we have a scoop coater, and now we're going to pour. Now you want to make sure that you have enough emulsion inside of your scoop coater so that it will coat your screen evenly. Now I'm doing this with one hand, so it's not as efficient as it could be, but one thing you should also remember is that whatever you don't use can end up being put back into the container. It's not like the stuff goes old immediately. See if I can get you in focus there. Alright, so you want to have like a nice even line of emulsion in there. Maybe tip it so that it's nice and even. Alright, so I'm going to take this up to my screen. I'm going to hold it and tilt it so that each of the supports on either side are resting against the screen. Now you'll see that the emulsion is flooded all the way up against the screen, which tells me that it's ready to swipe and it'll coat evenly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up, and as I do, it's going to coat the screen. And when I get to the top, I'll tilt back, let the emulsion run, and pull it up. Alright? So there we have a freshly coated screen. It's not perfect, but it'll get the job done. Once you have your screen coated, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put it in a dark place for it to dry. Now, in the studio, we have slots where screens can dry in the dark, and so I'm just going to stick this in there, let it do its thing. All right. So typically drying times will take anywhere from about 15 minutes to an hour. A couple things to note are that most emulsions will advise that you put a coat of emulsion on one side and another coat on the other side. This is not absolutely necessary, but it will make for strong stencils when you're printing. Now, for this demonstration, I only put one on there, and for a lot of my prints, I only put one on there just because I don't make editions that are that big, and also it saves me a lot of money in the long run. Another thing about emulsion is that you should keep it refrigerated. The colder that you keep it, as long as it's not frozen, the longer it'll last. Typically, emulsion that is left outside will only last you about a month, whereas emulsion that is put in the fridge might last you about 6 months, so that's something to keep in mind. Alright, so while our screen is drying, I'd just like to talk to you about your designs. So when creating designs for silkscreening, you're going to want to use a transparent paper. So you can't use like a regular printer paper, but you can use what's called photo vellum or laser print vellum. And so you can take pretty much any design that is black and white and print it onto this vellum, and then expose it on your screen, and it should come through clear. Now, one thing I want you to remember is that you want your designs to be as dark as possible. So what I mean by that is when you look at these two designs, they look similar up close, but when you look a little bit closer, you can see that this one here is gray, and it also has like these spots, whereas this one is a little bit darker, a little bit more opaque, and it'll allow for a cleaner exposure. So if I was to expose the screen, it might come through, but I might have trouble trying to rinse the screen out in the long run. You'll kind of see what I'm talking about when we go to expose our screen. But basically, you can use any material on a clear surface like that is dark and opaque. So you could use acrylic paint, you could use maybe Copic markers, and the way to test whether your design is dark enough is to hold it up to the sun, and if you can't see much through your paper, like if I hold this up to the sun, you can kind of see the black kind of shuts out that light. Whereas if I was to hold the other design up, you can see the light wants to come through. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. Another kind of transparency that you can use is acetate. Now, I believe this is the best stuff that you can use, but it's also more expensive, and it's tough to find printers that'll take it. So if you were to hold this up to the light, you can see it blocks out everything completely. It's very nice, it's extremely transparent, and it creates very crisp prints. Again, this is acetate, but you can also use things like tracing paper with acrylic paint. That'll get the job done as well. Okay, so our screen is now dry. It's probably been about half an hour, 45 minutes, and we are now ready to expose our screen. Okay, so this part is very important. Most emulsions will come with information on how to properly expose your screen using different kinds of light. The example that Speedball uses is, I believe, a 200-watt light bulb. But for this example, we are going to be using a exposure unit. Now, this thing is very, very nice, and it'll expose screens in about 3 minutes, whereas if you were to do this at home with a 200-watt light bulb, it would probably take you about an hour and a half, depending on your screen and how big the design is. So all we're going to do here is we are going to turn the main power on. We're going to turn on our viewing light so we can see what we're doing, and we're going to take our designs. Now, you're going to want to position your designs wherever they're going to fit
on your screen.
I think this side should be fine. I might just lower it a little bit. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. Alright, so I'm going to lower the top of this. Okay, I'm going to turn my viewing light off because we don't need that anymore. I need to make sure that the rope in here is tucked in. I'm going to turn this valve so it's closed. Now, right now it's set at one channel at 9 light units, and that's pretty much where it'll sit for most designs. So I'm just going to hit start, and what this is going to end up doing is it's going to suck down and put pressure onto my screen so that it pushes a little bit on my design. Now, if you were to do this at home, you would either put a piece of glass on the inside of your screen or something that would just kind of weight your screen down. Now, if you look, you can kind of see the thing, it's shooting light from the bottom through the design and through the screen. So what eventually is going to end up happening is wherever there is black ink on your design is going to block out the light and keep that area soft so that when you go to rinse your screen, everything else will be hardened, and that area where it was exposed to black will be easily rinsed out so that ink can be pushed through onto your design. And you'll get a better grasp of what I'm talking about when I go to rinse the screen, and you'll see just where the design was. Okay, so our screen is done exposing, so we're just going to turn this lever, and it's going to release pressure on the screen, you'll see this hood is going to get a little bit looser. And so once it's loose enough, we are just going to lift this up. Now if you look at this, you can see that the design has a little bit of a yellow tinge to it. And that's good because that means that our design was exposed correctly. So I take this off. You can see that yellow tinge. And the first thing you're going to want to do is immediately get it over to a hose or to a sink, and you're going to clean your screen out. You'll just coat it with some light water. Get it wet on one side, turn it over, get it wet on the other side. And I like to wait a minute. There we go, now we're in focus. I like to wait a minute before turning it back over again. So now what you're going to start seeing is that light green is going to start going away and it's going to punch through, and that is where your design is going to come through and you're going to be able to print. Alright, so we have finished rinsing our screen, and as you can see, where our design was black, it is now punched through and has been rinsed, while everything else has been hardened, creating a stencil. So we're just going to want to dry this. Now it doesn't matter if this dries in the light now or in the dark. It's already been exposed, the emulsion will not rinse off anymore, so it's all set. Okay, so our screen is dry and we are pretty much ready to print. One thing you'll notice is that my print is being latched down by these clamps. They are good to have. They allow you to keep your screen in place. It will not move when you are printing. And also, it helps you to register your paper. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a sec. But Speedball makes other clamps that are like this. I tend to like these a little bit better. You can find those at Blick as well for about $25 a set. Alright, so the printing process. This is the fun part. So you'll need some ink. Speedball makes that as well. They make a fabric ink, and they also make a regular printing ink. And the fabric ink is just about the same as the regular printing ink. The only difference is it can be printed on fabric. You can also use regular ink on fabric, but how long it lasts might vary. You want to make sure that if you were to do that, you do what's called heat setting. So you'll take your shirt or whatever else and you'll put it in the dryer for about an hour and just let that ink sit in before you go ahead and wash it or wear it. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab some ink and we are going to spread it on our screen. So you'll just want to use basically a thin string of ink at the top. You want enough that's going to be wide enough for your brayer pretty much, or your squeegee it's called. And as long as it'll cover pretty much the width of your design. As you can see, it's not quite there yet, but when we get all the way down to it, you'll see. So what you're going to want to do is, it's called flooding. So you're going to take your squeegee and you're going to pull it so that it floods ink into your design. Okay? So once that's there, I have this piece of acetate underneath, and it's glued down. And so what we're going to use that to tell exactly what our print looks like, as well as where our paper is going to line up. All right. So let's give it a whirl. So you're going to want to press down on your squeegee. Now it's always ideal to do this with two hands, but I only have one at the moment, so that's just fine. But you'll press down, apply some pressure, and pull back. And then you'll bring it back up. Lift it up. Okay, and the first one doesn't look that great because it's the first run and I just don't have enough pressure on it. So I'm going to do it with two hands and going to check back up in just a minute. Okay, so we have it printed cleanly, and as you can see, it's registered on our paper, or on our acetate. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our paper and we're going to put it underneath the acetate in the position that we want. Now typically you would have like maybe a smaller sheet and an actual picture on here that you're wanting to center, and so this is very useful for that. And so now you understand what I'm saying about the clamps. The clamps will hold this in place, and basically you know where your design is and you can put it wherever you'd like. Alright, so I'm going to peel back the acetate. Okay. I'm going to flood my screen. Push down, and you're ready to print. And there you have it. Now, it didn't print completely clean, probably because there wasn't enough ink over there, but still pretty crisp in all the other areas. And that is how you screen print. People have done this with, multiple layers where you have colors other than black, or you could even use black, and you layer them on one another, and you can do multiple screens. But for this demo, we're just using one screen, and that's one color, and that's how it's done. All right, thank you for watching.